Right. Good afternoon. Right. So there was some technical issues. That's why it took some time. Okay, doesn't matter. I tried to finish within 30 or 35 minutes. Look, so we had a revision class previously, and I explained about relative cell addresses and also some basics about spreadsheet. Right. So time to take the absolute cell address. And after that, we can take the functions which are included in our syllabus, right? So let's take the absolute cell address. Right, look here. I have a mark sheet which has 5 students, 3 subject marks. And also the total has been found, right? I already calculated using function. Okay, doesn't matter. Now, let's start that application of absolute cell address. Assume that every student will get 20 marks as additional marks. Okay, so let's give 20 marks for every student, right? For A, B, C, D, E, we need to add 20 marks. So typing 20 in every cell is useless because every student will get 20 additional marks. So I thought that it is enough to type in F2, and after that we have to add the 20 with every total, right? So let's find the final total here. This is final total. Okay, so here this is how I will calculate. This total has to be added with this 20 and the result should be shown here. Then this 188 should be added with 20 and the final total must be here. 219 must be added with 20 and like that, right? Okay, so let's start let's type the formula equal. So I'm typing the formula for student A. So where is the student A's total? It is in E2 plus, okay, plus 20, which means F2. Okay, E2 plus F2. In this instance, E2 has 208, F2 has 20. So now it shows the answer, 228. Okay. For the other people, we can't type the formula again and again. We have to copy and paste, right? So I'm going to copy this formula and paste to the remaining thing. So let's copy and paste. Now check it. Here we couldn't get what we expected, except for the first person, right? For the first person, it works. We got 2 to 8. It is because of these 2 figures. But look at the remaining figures. We couldn't get that expected answer. We got only the last total, right? 188, 219. So let's see what happened. I tried to explain a little quicker because you have that idea. So look here. I typed this formula equal E2 plus F2, but that has been changed as E3 plus F3. Right? So E2 becomes as E3, F2 becomes as F3. E2 becomes as E3, that is correct because student B's total is in E3. So changing from E2 to E3 is correct. But look here, what happened to F2? F2 becomes as F3. That is not correct because F3 is an empty cell. So now what happens? You are trying to add E3 with an empty cell, which means 0. So E3 has 188. F3 has 0, so which means 188. Even if you copy further, look here, equal E4 plus F4. Now E4, okay, it has the value, but look at the F4, again empty cell. So now you realize the problem, right? So here my formula is incorrect, but nothing wrong with E2. E2 became as E3, E4, E5, that is correct. We want that change, but look here, this is wrong. because F2 became as F3 at one instance, and then it became as F4, F5. This is not correct because F3 or F4, F5 or F6, they don't have any data. They have zero value. So now this is wrong. And have you noticed one thing here? F2 becomes as F3. Here F4. So there is nothing wrong with F. We typed F2. Now also it is F. Even after copying the formula, F remains F. But the problem is 3 because we typed as 2, but now it is 3. It will be 4 after some time, then 5. So where is the mistake? Here the row is the mistake. So we have to prevent that particular rows change, right? So how to prevent that change? Keep a dollar sign in front of that row. I keep the dollar sign in front of the row because the row is the one which changes. I did not put any dollar sign in front of the column. Have you noted? I didn't put anything because even without having the dollar, you know, F remains F. After copying, we can find F. So no need for any, why should we put the dollar sign? It is for preventing some changes, right? But here in this instance, F is not changing, even though there is no dollar sign, it is not changing, so no issue at all. But 2 should be prevented. So keep the dollar sign. Now check it. You can copy and paste. Now we have the expected answer. Okay, we got 228. It is because of these two numbers. We got 208, which means 188 and 20 were added. 239, 219 plus 20. It works. If you have doubt, you can double click and check it. Okay. E3 plus F$2. Do you remember the formula which we entered in G2? We entered equal E2 plus F$2. So E2 becomes as E3. We allowed that change. That's why we didn't put any dollar sign, right? So, okay. But look here, we typed as F$2. Now also F$2. The row is not changed. Even if you go further, it is E4, but the rest of the part remains same, F$2. Okay. It is E5, but again, the rest of the part same. E6, the other part same. Okay, so you should understand the place, or you should understand the application of the dollar. So you cannot put the dollar according to your wish. So when there is a need, you can put it. But look here, in this instance, the need is for row. We wanted to prevent the row, so I put the dollar in front of the row. If the dollar is missed, you know, row changes. Okay, so but what happens if you copy this formula in H2, right? Let's copy this formula to H2 and see the change. Okay, this is the formula which I type, equal E2 plus F$2. Now what happens? We are going from one column to another column. Earlier we moved from one row to another row, so row changes. To prevent the row, we put the dollar sign. Now we are moving from one column to another column. So now look what happens. Every column will take the next column. So E becomes as F, because we are going to the next column, right? E becomes as F. This F becomes as G, right? Look at the answer now. See, F2 plus G$2. Now this dollar cannot prevent this change because it is in front of the row. So that can only prevent the change in the row. Now we are changing the column. Okay. So I can explain this one on the board, right? So look, I try to explain with one example, try to understand because we already learned, right? Look here, we have a formula in B6. Okay, there is a formula in B6 equal A3 plus $5. Okay, A3 plus $5. Let's copy this formula to B7. Understand the fact, understand the absolute cell address and relative cell address with one example, right? With this example. Going from B6 to B7, so we are going to the next row. So now what happens to this formula? The column letters in this formula will take the next number, which means they will be increased. So A3 becomes as A4. It takes the next number because look here, we are moving from B6 to B7. So we are going to the next row. So here also it takes the next row plus. You know, in general, A5 becomes as A6. But look, there is a dollar. This dollar will not allow that change, right? So it remains $5. Okay. So let's copy this formula to C6 now. Earlier we copied to B7, which means to the next row. We were in the 6th row and then we moved to the 7th row. Now look here. You are in B6. Now you are trying to go to C6. Look here, row same. You are moving along with the same row. But look what happened to a column. Column takes the next letter, which means you're going to the next column. So now realize in this formula, every column will take the next letter because you're going to the next column. So what happens here? A becomes as B. Row remains row same, right? B3 plus A will take the next letter again B $5. So this is in C6 at the moment, right? So with this example, I tried to explain one important thing. Look, we have two types of cell addresses: relative cell address, absolute cell address. So I tell you what absolute cell address is and what relative cell address is at the moment. You know, if it is relative cell address, a cell address in a formula is changed when the formula is copied to another cell. I repeat it. A cell address in a formula can be changed when the formula is copied to another cell. That is relative. A cell address in a formula is not changed when the formula is copied to the next cell or another cell. It is absolute cell address. So when the formula is copied, you know, relative cell addresses are changed. But even though the formula is copied to another cell, these absolute cell addresses are not changed. Let's understand. Look here. Take it again. Equal A3 plus $5, right? Now, we copied that formula to B7, right? Which means next row. Now look here, what happens to A? It remains A, no problem, right? It remains A. But look here, 3 becomes as 4. 3 becomes as 4. So when you go from B6 to B7, you know, row changed. Okay? I'm checking the first one, not the other one, right? This one, A3. So when you go from B6 to B7, column remains same, but row changed. 6 became as 7. Okay, right. When you go from B6 to C6, which means when you go to the next column, 6 remains 6. So no changes occurred in row. But look what happened to B, it became as C. So when you go from one column to another column, you know, column changes. So now I can simply say that this cell address in this formula is changed when the formula is copied. The change means it both column and row. So when we go to the next row, row changes. When you go to the next column, column changes. So this is called relative cell address. If it is relative cell address, both column and row can be changed, but it depends on that situation. If you are trying to copy to the next row or another row, row changes. If you are copying the formula to next column, column changes. So there is a possibility for changing both column and row. That is relative. I already told you about absolute. What is it? If a cell address in a formula is not changed when the formula is copied, then it is called absolute cell address. Have a look at this example again. Look at the second part now. You go from B6 to B7, so which means you go to the next row, right? Next row. Look here, you typed $5, now also $5. Okay, we entered $5, now also $5. But look, we have moved from B6 to B7, but this part remains same. There is no changes occurred. Okay, look. When you go from B6 to C6, look at this part, $5 becomes as $5. But when you go from one row to another row, nothing happens. So it suits to our absolute cell address definition. I define that absolute cell address as not changed. The cell address is not changed when the formula is copied. So when formula is copied from B6 to B7, no changes occur. This is absolute. So this cell address can be called absolute cell address. This cell address can be called relative cell address. But not, we have a confusion here because as I told you earlier, absolute cell address is not changed. Look here, it is not changed. But when you copy this formula to C6, you know, there is a change. Even though I defined that as not changed, now I could clearly see $5 became as $5. So now the column changes. So it seems that it is against to the definition. No, because even though the column is changed, you know, row is not changed. In this example, but in the first example, both row and column change. I clearly illustrated. But here in this cell address, yes, column is changed. It's not an issue, but row remains row. So if you are able to keep one component as permanent, then it is absolute. Here in this instance, you are able to prevent the change in row. So that is more than enough to take or get that absolute cell address. But here, yes, column can be changed, right? It is possible to change the column. So I come to the point, there are three types of absolute cell addresses. You have three different types. They are a row absolute cell address, column absolute cell address, row and column absolute cell address. Okay, row absolute, column absolute, and row and column absolute. So you have three different cell addresses. Look here. What is row absolute? It's very simple. A row in a cell address is not changed when the formula is copied to another cell. If a row in a formula is not changed when the formula is copied to another cell, then it is row absolute. Okay. $5 remains $5. Even if you copy this formula anywhere in the worksheet, now we went from B6 to B7, you may copy to any other cell. $5 remains $5. That never changes. So which means it is row absolute. Because the idea is simple. If dollar is in front of row never changes. So here column absolute. So column absolute means a column in a cell address is not changed when the formula is copied to another cell. So how to make that as column absolute? Keep a $sign in front of column letter. Here I have dollar in front of row. That's why it is row absolute. Here row never changes. But if you want to prevent a change in column, keep the dollar in front of column. That is column absolute. If it is row and column, keep the dollar in front of both column and row. right? You need to keep the dollar in front of column letter as well as row number. So that is called row and column. If it is row and column, both are not changed. Both column and row are not changed. I take one simple example. Look. Right, have a look at this. Equal. So we have a formula in B7 equal C5 plus dollar, right, D3. So now let's check this one. Let's copy this into B8. Okay. So what happens? We go from one row to another row, going from 7th row to 8th row. So here in this cell, in this formula, every row takes the next number. So C5 becomes C6 plus D3 becomes as D4. Note the dollar is in front of the column. Is there any dollar sign in front of the row? No, right? So row, look, right? So it means dollar D4. So let's copy this formula to C7. C7. So now what happens? We go from one column to another column. So now column changes. So what happened to C5? It's D5 plus. Generally D becomes as E, but note there is a dollar, it prevents. So it remains dollar D3. So now what happens? A C5 is relative cell address. If a cell address doesn't have any dollar, then it is relative because there is a possibility for changing both column and row. That is relative. Now look here. When you copy from copy to B8, row changes, right? D3 becomes as D4. But when you go from one column to another column, it remains same. We typed dollar $D3. Now also it's dollar $D3. So what is it? Now column is not changed. If you copy this formula anywhere in the worksheet, you can keep the dollar. Sorry, you can keep the column as it is. It remains dollar $D, but 3 can be changed. So this kind of a cell address is called column absolute cell address. If a cell address has dollar, then it is absolute, but here row is changed, but column is the one which is prevented. So this is called column absolute. Okay, right. So then the next one would be having the dollar in front of both, right, in front of both column and row. So now let's copy this formula to B8. So going from 7th row to 8th row. So C5 becomes as C6. Generally, D4 becomes as D5, but note there is a dollar in front of row that prevents the change. So it remains same, dollar D, dollar 4. Okay. B7, C7. So you go to the next column, right? So C5 becomes D5 plus. D becomes as E, but note there is a dollar in front of column that prevents the change. So it again remains same, dollar D, dollar 4. So look at this. When you go from one row to another row, it remains same. Even when you try to go to the next column, again same. So here, both row and column are not changed. This is called row and column absolute cell address. Okay, so you should understand where the dollar sign is placed. You must put it in the appropriate place. When we do papers, past papers, we can understand, but you must have such skill. Okay, so it's very simple. I come to the conclusion for these two addresses. If it is relative cell address, it doesn't have any dollar, but if it is relative cell address, both column and row can be changed when it is copied. It depends on the situation. If you are going to the next row, row changes. If you are going to the next column, column changes. Okay. But on the other side, absolute cell address is not changed when a formula is copied. There are three types of absolute: row absolute, column absolute, and row and column absolute. If it is row absolute, row is not changed, but column can be changed. If it is column absolute, column never be changed, but there is a possibility for changing row. But if it is column and row absolute, both column and row are not changed when you copy the formula anywhere. Okay, right. So these are enough for about formula. Sorry, yes, about formula and these cell addresses. So let's quickly switch to the functions and take those functions. So I tell you what function is. Functions are special formula found in spreadsheet software, because you know these are formula. Actually, these are not special things in spreadsheet. These are our mathematical applications. But sometimes for some calculations using mathematics is tough. So a spreadsheet software has some special formula called functions. There are hundreds of functions available in a spreadsheet for performing calculations. You can perform so many calculations, so many variety of calculations using functions. Mathematical calculations, they are financial, date, time related calculations, text related calculations, statistical related calculations. So you have plenty. But fortunately, we have only 5 functions in our syllabus. And also all of them are very simple because their format also same. Even though I use the word format, that can be called syntax. Syntax means rules. Rules on how to write a function. That is almost same, right? Okay, without further explanation, I will apply those functions directly. Look here. Right, take a look at this. I use this data sheet for explaining. Right, so you have some students and their 3 marks. Let's find the total. This time we will use the function. So for adding the numbers, there is a function called sum, equal sum. Every function starts with an English word. So equal sum. Okay. So when you put the simple bracket, look here, under this function, you have a small label which shows sum, number 1, comma number 2. Actually, this shows how this formula is typed, or this shows the format of this formula. It can also be called syntax. Syntax means rules. Okay, syntax. Even in Pascal programming, we use the word syntax because we have to follow some rules there. Here also, you have some rules. You know how to write it. You have to obey those rules. So according to the rule, it's sum, then simple bracket. Yes, I have applied. And then number 1. Number 1 means the first cell which has number. What is it? B2. Then put a comma. Then number 2. What is it? You can't put the number directly, because if you put the number directly like 65, you cannot copy and paste. It works when even when you type 65, it works, but you cannot copy and paste when you type the figure. So here it is C2, comma. Look here, it shows number 3. What is my third number? 65. Where is it? It is in D2. Now it asks number 4. I don't have any other numbers, so close the bracket. Equal sum B2, comma C2, comma D2. Press the enter key. Now you get the answer. How to get the others total? Just copy and paste. I already told you that dragging fill handle also copy paste method, but it's a shortcut method. You can write it. And check whether things are correctly changed. Look here. I typed equal sum B2, comma C2, comma D2. Now it becomes as B5, C5, D5. You can understand how that change happened. Okay, right. But the problem is, if you have 3 numbers, 2 numbers to be added, it's okay. You can use this format. But when you have many numbers to be added, maybe 20 numbers, 50 numbers, this is too tough because you need to type all these 20 or 50 addresses. That takes time. So we have another method. The function is same, that is sum. But we can have another method. Look, when all the numbers that you want to add are in a certain range, you know what cell range is, right? I explained. Cell range means having the figures maybe horizontally or vertically in a continuous manner. So here, look here, 78, 65, 65. They are in the neighboring cells. So this is a cell range. So you can show the cell range. So how to show the cell range? The starting cell, which means B2. Then you don't need to write the cells which are in between the first and last cell. Okay, so type B2 and colon sign. In mathematics, you call it as is2, it's colon, right? Which means the range. Now show the final cell address which is in the range. What is the final cell? D2. Okay, so this is D2. So equal sum B2 to D2. B2 colon D2 means B2 to D2. So now you know C2 also included, right? Press the enter key and get the answer. To get the others total, copy and paste, it definitely works. If you have doubt, you can check, double click on the last cell and check it. Okay, equal sum B6 colon D6, B6 here, D6 here. So it shows all these three cells. Clear? So this is the sum function. Even if you want to look here, if you want to add all these numbers, assume you want to add all the numbers. This may not be suitable, but assume that you want to add all these numbers. So type equal sum. It may not be meaningful, but we can. I want to add all these numbers, equal sum. Now you can show the cell range, where the range starts here, B2 colon, where the range ends, this must be the last one. Okay, you can include them in a small square or rectangle, and the top left corner should be the starting point of the cell range, and the bottom right corner should be the last cell address. So it is D6. Now look here, equal sum B2 colon D6. You can clearly see the blue mark there. It surrounds everything. So now whole range selected. Press the enter key and see the answer. Suppose if you want to add the first 6 numbers, these 2 rows and the last row. Okay, you want to add the first 2 rows, which means 6 numbers, and the last 3 numbers, 9 numbers. Now you cannot use this range because it includes everything. So look here, all these 9 numbers, you have 9 numbers, but all these 9 numbers are not in the range. First 6 numbers are in the range, last one in another range. So in order to add these 9 numbers, these first 6 numbers and the last number, right? So you may use this idea, B2 colon D3 comma this one. Have a look at this. Now what happened? You are trying to add 2 ranges. The blue one shows this range, 6 numbers inside. The green one shows the last one, right? 3 numbers inside. You have a comma because you need to separate them by a comma. So now press the enter key. Now numbers added. Okay, so this is sum function. If you want to find the average, it's equal average. Okay, average. Look at the syntax, same syntax, number 1, number 2, which means, right, every cell. So B2, comma, C2, comma, C2. Same as sum. The only difference between sum and average is they are sum, he average. Except that the format same. Now press the enter key, you got the answer. Copy and paste, you can have the answer. If you have doubt, you can double click and check it. Okay, so what is the format? Equal average, then show every cell address separated by comma. But here also you may have problem, because if you want to find the average for 3 or 4 numbers, it's okay. But when you want to find the average for 100 numbers or 20 numbers, you know it's tough. So you have the other method as sum. What is it? Equal average. Okay, within bracket, show the cell range. So in this instance, where the range starts, B2 colon D2. Okay, D2. Equal average B2 colon D2. Now also you got it. Copy and paste to get the others. Okay, so if you are able to remember the sum, you can manage the average also. Then the next one would be maximum, max. Look here, I want to find the maximum number among these 3 numbers, largest number. So equal max. I want to find the maximum number or the highest marks which student A obtains, right? Equal max. Now look at the syntax again, say number 1, number 2. So it expects you to type every cell address separated by comma. So B2, comma, C2, comma, D2. Okay, equal max B2, comma, C2, comma, D2. Press the enter key. Now 78. You know, 78 is the largest number in the first row. Copy and paste. You can find the answer. Got it? So this is max. So suppose if you want to find the maximum for all these numbers, again, you have that idea equal max. So give the cell range, what is it? B2 to D6. Okay, B2 to D6. Now it shows 89. You can find 89 is the largest one. Okay. Like I mentioned earlier, if you want to find the maximum from first six, first six and the last three, you want to find the maximum number from first 6 numbers and the last 3 numbers. So give the first range B2 colon D2, comma, this one. What is it? B6 colon D6. So you have, B2 colon D3, right? First 6, okay, D3, first 6, and the last one. Now you have the average, maximum. Okay. Then minimum. If you want to take the minimum, it's equal min and give the cell range. Even comma also correct, right? You know the idea, so that's why I use the colon. Equal min B2 colon D2, press the enter key, it gets the answer, it shows the answer. Copy and paste, you can find the answers. Suppose if you want to comma, that is also possible. Okay, let me show the comma. B2 comma C2 comma D2. This is also possible. Copy paste. Okay, equal min B6 C6 D6. This is the fourth one. Final one. You can count the numbers which are in a worksheet. Look, I want to find this. I want to count this data. So equal count. So now it shows value 1, value 2, value 3, almost similar to number 1, number 2, number 3. In sum, in max, in min, in average, it asks us to type number 1, number 2. Now it asks us to type value, almost same, but I tell you what value is, right? So now show every cell address by separated comma, like B2, comma, C2, comma, D2, comma, E2, B3, comma, C3. It takes time. You know, you cannot do like that, right? It takes time. So better avoid this method and show the cell range. I want to find, or I want to count the number of data, right? So show the cell range. B2 colon D6 equal count B2 colon D6. So I want to count the data which are entered in this range. Press the enter key. So you have 15 data here. In this area, you have 15 data. But remember, the function counts only value, which means numerals. It never counts any label or text. Suppose if I type a letter here like TT, now it shows 14. But no, this B2 also in the range. Look at the cell range, B2 colon D6. So this B2 cell also in the range, but the data which is entered in B2 is not taken into consideration because it is a text. It is a label. You know, label takes left alignment, right? Left alignment. That is not counted. Okay, the remaining things are counted. Even if you type a 0 there, it is a value. Now see, it is 15. Suppose if you leave it as blank, it is 14 because that B2 is nothing. It doesn't have any data. So you can't say that there is a 0 there and it is 15. No data there. So it cannot find any value in B2. So if it doesn't find any value, then it ignores. So it must be 14. So why count? It is for counting the value. The last one, these are the 5 functions in the syllabus, but I tell you that the next one also, counter. So counter function can count both text and numbers. Okay, if you want to find both text and number, use the function count. The function count counts only values, numerical figures, but the function counter can count both numerals as well as text, but we don't have counter function in our syllabus. Okay, so these are the functions to be remembered. I quickly explain because these are too simple. You have idea, and also you have the written notes, right? The chart is not explained in revision because we can manage with the charts when we're doing past paper, because there may be 1 mark or 2 mark questions asked in past in charts, so it is not big. Okay, so that's enough for today. I tried to wind up today a little early because I started late. So enough. We can start doing the past paper questions from the next class. Okay, thank you.